Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Moments away, Leah Webb will be with us. But first, a word from Rise Gardens.
Rise Gardens is a revolutionary hydroponic gardening system for your home. Instead of food traveling hundreds or even over 1,000 miles before it hits your patio, your plate, harvest the veggies and herbs and greens you need for dinner tonight on the comfort of your home. No green thumb required knowledge. Gardening made easy with the Rise Gardens app. Step-by-step guidance from seed to harvest. A complete garden on a shelf and comes with everything you need to grow healthy and the freshest food for you and your loved ones. Fully customize your garden to your needs and preferences. For more information and to get a Rise Garden, visit risegardens.com.
Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Leah is passionate about helping people nourish themselves with whole foods. She's a cookbook author of the Sugar-Free, Grain-Free, and Dairy-Free Family Cookbook and garden writer of the 7-Step Homestead. She's also a garden consultant, speaker, and mother. Welcome to the program, Leah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day, not only to educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners. And I'll start with this. There's a lot of buzzwords around food these days. What is whole foods? What are whole foods? Where does that fall into it? And explain that.
To answer that as simply as I can, I would say that it's using ingredients that have been minimally processed. And if you want to simplify that even more and give yourself some criteria as to what it is that actually means, it means to be cooking with ingredients that have basically come directly from the farm. So this means you're cooking from scratch, using ingredients that are as close to the things that we were probably using 200 years ago before the invention of packaged processed foods.
Well, and now the follow-up would be to people whom just, how easy is it to get a hold of these products that are considered whole foods without breaking the bank?
That's a great question, and it's a complicated answer because some of it depends on economics and whether or not you're able to afford these things, and where is your geographic location, and are these foods actually available to you where you live? Some of us live in regions where we have great access to farmers markets that have also been connected to programs such as WIC and SNAP benefits. And so they've made some of these wholesome foods more available to a wider consumer base, but it's just not possible for everybody. So for my family, I've used a lot of strategies such as cooking in bulk, purchasing foods in bulk, maintaining a garden, which gardening is not necessarily always a money saver. Investing in things like chickens and things like that can still be costly. And so it's really, having access to whole foods and having these ingredients requires some money, some actually living in a place where you have access, and then also requires time to be able to invest in cooking those things. But I will say that meal planning, purchasing foods in bulk, planning ahead, and knowing what it is that I'm going to be feeding my family are some of the best tools in order to make these whole foods meals show up on the table more often for us.
Well, and people whom may not be financially capable or locational wise in order to fully get whole foods, one, do the best you can, and two, start looking at what's in what you're buying. You will figure out a way. If some of this stuff is scary, first of all, that what you're eating, and Holly and I are guilty of it. It tastes great, but it's probably going to kill us. But people just read the label, first of all, I think is the beginning steps.
Yeah, reading the labels and seeing if the ingredients are even pronounceable and recognizable. For example, you can buy one brand of cracker and the ingredients will be salt and wheat, or hopefully the other way around, wheat and salt. You can buy another list. You can get another brand of cracker and there will be 15 to 20 ingredients on there, mainly ones that you can't actually pronounce.
Absolutely. And then even from brand to brand for a similar item, similar ingredients, some are just chock full of sodium, like added sodium, or just like if you look at pasta sauce, there's so much added sugar in some of these brands. And I think even for me, I know I read labels just comparatively a jar of pasta sauce is $3 versus $3.50. Like maybe that 50 cents is worth it, you know?
Yeah. You also bring up a good point, because often when we go to the grocery store, many of us are buying the same items every single time, right? We kind of have our default items that we go to. And so if you do take that extra time to pick out the brand that fits within your criteria for your ingredient list and within your price range, then you can just keep buying that brand again and again. Humans are creatures of habits. We definitely tend to do the same thing again and again.
I agree. So you refer to yourself as a solutions-based family, food, and garden coach. What is that? And then how did you get into doing that, the coaching?
Yeah, so with family food and garden coaching, I try to support families in making practical changes to their lifestyles through meal planning and gardening. What I have found is that families especially are incredibly busy, and we need solutions to actually reach our goals. You can say that you'd like to eat more whole foods, or that you'd like to be in the garden, or that you'd like to be exercising more, drinking more water, moving more, all of these things, but we really need solutions and very specific ways that we're going to reach those goals. And so what I help families do is actually identify their goals, and then help them make small yet impactful lifestyle changes to reach their goals. One of the things that I always like to encourage people to do is look at where they want to be, and then just pick a couple of things to change at a time. So when we pick this big lofty goal and we shoot for the moon, and then all of a sudden we become overwhelmed because it's too much work to get there, we find ourselves right back in those old habits that we were trying to kick. And so if we're able just to focus on a couple of things at a time, then we tend to be far more successful in the long run. So that's what I mean by these small yet impactful lifestyle changes. And I actually got into this because I've taught for quite some time. I have a bachelor's in biology, a master's of public health, and taught biology and gardening through both of those programs that I went through. And then completed a health coach certification in 2012, which is the same year that I became a mother. Shortly after my son was born, we realized that he had some food sensitivities, and then as he became older, we realized that he had some true allergies. It used to be a fairly long list of foods that we carried an EpiPen for, to, guarantee that he, if he ate the wrong thing, he could end up in the hospital pretty immediately. And so you can imagine that really impacted my relationship with food, seeing how, yes, you need to be eating healthy, but that we also had to enforce some restrictions that were going to keep my son alive and well. And then after my daughter was born, she was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disease that impacts the lungs and pancreas. And part of her care requires that she takes more frequent antibiotics compared to the general population. And so as a mother to a child with asthma and allergies, we know that this is an inflammatory response from the immune system. And we know that much of the immune system is initiated in the gut, in the digestive tract. And so all of these microbes that exist within our microbiome are incredibly beneficial to us. And so then also having a daughter who is taking antibiotics a little bit more frequently than I may have liked, I really turned to food as a way to further support their health and try to provide them with the most nutrient-dense diet that I possibly could. So I was graduating with my health coach certification, coming into this world of motherhood, had taught for many years, and just started to realize how important it was for families, especially, and many of us are dealing with different health challenges, and how important it was for us to find solutions that we could actually execute on a daily basis to help support the health of our families. And then gardening really came in because people have a difficult time executing all of these things they should be doing. And they always are feeling like, I should be doing this, and I should be doing that, and I should be doing this. And what I found is that when you got people interested in gardening, they were automatically engaged in those healthier habits in a way that was fun. So they were outdoors, they were engaging with nature, they were moving their bodies, they were bending and lifting and squatting and doing all of the things that you have to do to plant a garden. And then the byproduct is that you're harvesting some of the freshest foods that you've ever had. And so now I really focus on teaching gardening because gardening and meal planning, just because I feel like those techniques alone give people the tools to start embarking on this healthier journey that just really can change their lifestyle over a long term.
Fantastic. Sounds really great. So you have two books. One is the sugar-free, it's a cookbook, the sugar-free, grain-free, and dairy-free family cookbook. And then you also have the 7-Step Homestead. If you could tell us briefly more about them and maybe kind of like a teaser from each about them, why our listeners should look into either or both of them.
Yeah, so lo and behold, both of my books have to do with systems. I am a solutions-based coach, and so I like to help people find systems that break larger tasks down into smaller ones. And so my cookbook is about the diet that we followed pretty strictly for about 4 years to help treat the conditions that my kids were dealing with. So that was grain-free, sugar-free, and dairy-free. And what I found with that is that I was always in the kitchen, and I wanted to have more time to engage in some of the other activities that I was interested in doing. And so I, over time, developed a system of meal planning and prep that involves freezing foods, cooking in bulk, finding time to cook when it's actually convenient, and then using whole foods ingredients in a way that was also simple, right? So not necessarily having to spend loads and loads of time in the kitchen while also producing nutrient-dense foods for your family that are delicious. And so my cookbook is really about that system of meal planning and prep, and those simple nutrient-dense recipes that I was feeding my family. And you don't necessarily have to follow that specific grain-free, dairy-free, sugar-free diet in order to benefit from this book and the recipes that are in it. And then with my homesteading book, the 7-Step Homestead, this is also a system because what I learned from doing consultations with people for many years, garden consultations, is that everyone saw the end goal of these gorgeous homesteads that they see on Instagram and Facebook. And what they don't realize are how many steps went into that in order to create that amazing garden or homestead, and how many failures that all of these amazing gardeners and homesteaders have encountered along the way. And so with the 7-Step Homestead, I have basically taken the garden that I have, the small, I call it a micro farm or a micro homestead. I'm not full blown homestead over here. I'm only working on about 3/4 of an acre. And I've basically taken that and broken it down into 7 manageable steps that each one of them includes a different skill set. And so, for example, when you start the book, you start with 2 small raised beds. And I just give you the information that you need to execute that step. Once you master your 2 small raised beds, then you can expand into 400 square feet. And then by the end of all of these steps, you've got chickens, fruits, berries, you've got 4-season growing, and all of these diverse things that you can add to your homestead.
Well, let's talk about, let's go back to the whole foods thing for a moment. If someone is going to start working towards a whole food lifestyle, what is an unexpected challenge they may face, and could they overcome that, or how can they overcome that without feeling defeated?
I think the number one challenge that I see people face is that that time period that precedes meal times, that like 30 minutes to an hour right before you're supposed to be eating, is often the worst time to be cooking, right? This is when we're either first waking up in the morning, or we're away from the house at lunch, or right when everybody has gotten home from work. And none of these periods are often good. it's usually a very hectic time, especially if you have kids. And so the solution that I have found that I think works for most people is to find a window of time to do as much prep work as you can that works for your schedule and is convenient. And I think what people will be surprised to find is that there are a number of tasks that can be performed in advance, such as washing and chopping vegetables, cooking meats. Some of these things can even be frozen and then pulled out of the freezer later on, whether it be weeks or even a couple months down the road. And so I think that identifying when is the most opportune time to be cooking, whether that's Saturday morning, nighttime, it varies for everybody. Find that time and do as much prep work in advance as you possibly can.
That's some really great, helpful advice. So we've really enjoyed having you on the program, Leah. How can people find out more about you, your great information, all of the good stuff?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Leah M. Webb, and I'm also leahmwebb.com. And then they can find information about the 7-Step Homestead and the grain-free, sugar-free, dairy-free family cookbook through my website, or it's available through most of the major book retailers. And then you can also find me throughout the country doing events such as Mother Earth News Fair and then some of the other gardening and homesteading events.
Well, Leah, thank you so much for the time you've offered us and the education you provided for Holly and myself and all of our listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure getting to speak with you both.
Thank you.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.